She had the kind of voice that stopped time. Powerful, soulful, unmistakable. Jazmine Sullivan could turn heartbreak into art, pain into poetry, and her name was already etched beside legends. Then, at the height of her fame, when she was dominating charts and earning Grammy nominations, she vanished. Her announcement was brief, almost casual. It's just not fun anymore. But that wasn't the truth. The truth was darker. Behind the applause and the platinum plaques, Jazmine was hiding something she didn't dare say out loud. Not yet. What really happened to one of R&B's greatest voices? And how did she transform the lowest moment of her life into one of the most inspiring comebacks in modern music? Before she became a Grammy-winning powerhouse, Jazmine Marie Sullivan was a church girl from Philadelphia, the city of soul. Born on April 9, 1987, music wasn't just a dream. It was in her DNA. Her mother, Pam Sullivan, was a backup singer for Philadelphia International Records, the same label that gave the world the OJs and Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. Her father, Don, worked as a curator for the historic Strawberry Mansion, which, fun fact, was also the family's actual home. Imagine being a kid growing up inside a literal landmark. Every hallway echoed with history. Every room carried stories of the past. And inside those walls, a 5-year-old Jazmine began building her own legacy. She started singing in her church's children's choir, her contralto voice so rich that even adults stopped to listen. It didn't take long before she was cast in local theater, playing Dorothy in a community production of The Wiz. That stage became her first real love. Years later, she'd write Lions, Tigers, and Bears, a song that wasn't just about fear, it was a confession, a reminder that while she could face a crowd of thousands, she was still terrified of love. But destiny had only just begun to show its hand. At 11 years old, Jazmine stepped onto the stage at Showtime at the Apollo. The crowd, known for being brutally honest, went silent. This tiny girl opened her mouth, and suddenly everyone was holding their breath. By the time she finished, the audience was on their feet. And one man in the crowd knew he had just witnessed something extraordinary, Stevie Wonder. He invited her to sing with him. At 13, Jazmine found herself performing alongside one of the greatest musicians alive and holding her own. It wasn't just a dream come true. It was a masterclass in artistry, humility, and power. By 15, she had a record deal with Jive Records. They promised her the world, an album, a tour, a career. She poured her heart into every song, stayed up late writing, rewriting, believing this was her big break. And then, silence. The label shelved the project. No explanation, no release, just gone. They eventually dropped her altogether. For most teens, that would have been the end. But for Jazmine, it was the start of something bigger. Because around that same time, a woman named Missy Elliott heard her sing, and everything changed. Missy called Timbaland, practically shouting into the phone, "You have to hear this girl, she's special." From that moment on, Missy became more than a mentor. She was a guide through the storm, but even Missy couldn't protect her from what was coming next. Fast forward to 2008. Jazmine was 21, and the world was finally hearing what Missy had known all along. Her debut single, Need You Bad, featuring Missy herself, exploded. It hit #1 on Billboard's R&B chart and introduced a sound that was raw, powerful, and impossible to ignore. Her debut album, Fearless, dropped soon after, and it lived up to its name. It went platinum, earned her multiple Grammy nominations, and gave us Bust Your Windows, an anthem that made heartbreak sound triumphant. Even Stevie Wonder called it a classic. To the world, Jazmine Sullivan had it all: fame, respect, and the kind of voice that could shake souls. But behind closed doors, her reality was falling apart. Somewhere between studio sessions and award shows, she fell in love. At first, it felt real, the kind of romance that made her believe in happily ever after. But the fairy tale didn't last. The man she loved began showing another side: jealous, possessive, controlling. Slowly, her confidence began to crack. The woman who could command a stage was being silenced in her own home. and soon the emotional abuse turned physical. In interviews years later, Jazmine admitted what really happened. She'd been in an abusive relationship that nearly cost her everything, even her hearing. During one fight, he hit her so hard that she couldn't hear out of one ear. "I've never told this before," she said quietly in a radio interview, "but he slapped me so hard I couldn't hear." For weeks, she performed through pain, smiling for cameras, while hiding bruises under makeup. No one suspected that the woman belting fearless on stage was living in fear off stage. He isolated her from friends, controlled her phone, her schedule, her self-worth. He made her believe she was nothing without him. And the terrifying part? She started to believe it. She'd stare at herself in the mirror, whispering, "Who are you? This isn't you." The strong, confident artist she once knew was gone, replaced by someone scared to speak. By 2011, something inside her broke. She tweeted, "I'm leaving music. It's just not fun anymore." The world was stunned. But it wasn't music she was leaving. It was him. After that tweet, Jazmine Sullivan disappeared completely. No shows, no interviews, no appearances. Her fans thought she'd gone into hiding, and she had, but not for the reasons they imagined. In truth, she was running for her life, trying to reclaim her sanity after years of trauma. For the first time in years, she was alone, and the silence was both terrifying and healing. She started spending hours wandering through a Pier 1 import store, quietly crying between aisles of candles and pillows. "The workers never bothered me," she later wrote. "They could tell I was a sad girl." The store became her refuge, a place where no one asked questions, no one expected her to sing. Those moments were where she started piecing herself back together, one quiet breath at a time. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't healing in the way people think, it was survival. 3 years passed before the world heard from her again, and when she returned, she was different. In 2014, she announced her comeback with an album called Reality Show. It wasn't a glossy R&B record. It was raw, honest, and painfully human. She'd spent her years away watching reality TV, fascinated by the way people exposed their vulnerabilities on camera. It inspired her to do the same through her music. Songs like Forever Don't Last and Mascara weren't just hits. They were therapy. She sang about heartbreak, resilience, and rediscovering herself after trauma. The album hit #1 on Billboard's R&B albums chart in 2015. But more than success, it was redemption. She'd taken her pain and turned it into purpose. Still, the one thing she thought she'd lost forever, love, was waiting for her in the most unexpected place. In 2017, Jazmine met Dave Watson, a musician and producer who would change everything. For the first time, love didn't hurt. Dave was gentle, grounded, and believed in her. Not for her fame, but for her heart. She once wrote, "You took this beat-up heart and made it feel brand new again." Together they created music, including the haunting Lost One, a song soaked in pain but sung with freedom. He didn't rescue her. He reminded her she never needed saving. Their relationship grew quietly, built on honesty, communication, and respect. Everything her old relationship lacked. And with that love came a new kind of courage, to speak truth without fear. Then came 2021. Jazmine dropped "Oh Tales," and the world stopped. The project wasn't just an album, it was a movement. Real voice memos from women, real stories about love, desire, heartbreak, and empowerment. It was fearless, intimate, and brutally honest. It debuted at #4 on the Billboard 200 and earned her first Grammy. Finally, official recognition for years of authenticity. Songs like "Pick Up Your Feelings" and "Girl Like Me" became anthems for women everywhere. But beyond the accolades, something even bigger was happening. Jazmine was healing in public and showing others they could too. Even legends took notice. In a 2022 interview, the iconic Patti LaBelle revealed she once thought Jazmine disliked her. "I thought she hated me," Patti said. In reality, Jazmine was just too shy to speak to her idol. When the two finally talked, Patty was moved to tears. That misunderstanding turned into a friendship and a promise to collaborate. "I'm coming out of retirement to record with her," Patty declared. 2 generations of soul finally united. Today, Jazmine Sullivan stands not just as a 2-time Grammy winner, but as a survivor, an advocate, and a symbol of strength. Her estimated net worth sits around $7 million, but her true wealth lies in what she's given back: hope, courage, and truth. She continues to write, perform, and speak out about domestic violence and mental health, reminding fans that healing isn't linear. It's a lifelong process. She's never had children, but her music has become a mother's voice for countless women who needed to feel seen. The little girl from Philadelphia who once sang in church has become a legend, not just because of her voice, but because of her resilience. The woman who once cried in a department store aisle now stands on world stages, her voice carrying stories of survival and grace. And maybe that's what makes her so unforgettable, because Jazmine Sullivan didn't just sing through the pain, she transformed it. She lost everything and found herself. And in doing so, she reminded the world that even the quietest voices can roar the loudest when they finally decide to speak.